Hello, my friends. I am excited to be here on Instagram Live. Eric Zimmer, host of the One You Feed podcast, will be joining us any moment now. We're going to have a meditation and a discussion on working with nature, working with what I've come to call earth energy, for lack of a better term, in the space of meditation practice and in the space in particular of awakening, becoming more present, but that correlates directly to what it is to heal our hearts, the deep wounds we hold inside, right? The reactivities that play out in our relationships and our work all over the place. We can absolutely tap into this earth energy in the space of our meditation practice to really, I'll just say it plain, that the earth actually holds a certain level of love and compassion for us, which might sound kind of far out and woo-woo, but it's an experiential truth. And what we'll be doing very, very shortly here, and I see you, Eric, is diving into an experience of that, an experience of it. So don't take my words at face value. Don't do that, but rather, let's drop into an experience. Now, I'm just waiting for Eric, who should be here any moment now. I do see he is in our midst. This is also a very timely conversation in that it's warmer weather out, the sun is shining, we're all spending lots more time outside. And so, hello, my friend. You're here.
Hello. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I sure can. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you great. Yeah.
I'm sans AirPods, as you have so smartly worn.
Well,
I was, yeah, good to see you. How's your day so far?
very good. Very good.
Yeah.
I'm feeling excited and relieved that I figured out how to do this.
I got a little bit nervous before hopping on as well. I haven't done an Instagram Live in quite some time, and so, yeah.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, definitely a warm, hearty hello to. We've got a couple dozen folks hanging out with us. Yeah. So, any opening remarks that you want to offer before we dive into the intended meditation practice and then the conversation?
Just that I'm excited to, be talking here in this time together about, connecting with nature and the value that I've, gotten from that in my own life and the immense potential that is there. So I'm excited to talk with you about that and also to talk about our upcoming workshop. So you could take us away though with the meditation.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, these whether we're talking about yoga, whether we're talking about Buddhism, or whether we're talking about so many different modalities of transformation, of spirituality, of connected presence, however you conscious evolution, however you want to define it. If we look to the traditions, they all have their earth-based elements to them.
Yep.
And we can certainly benefit from tapping into that wisdom. So, yeah, without further ado, let's drop into a practice. We'll practice together for about, I'll try to keep it to 10 minutes, but I tend to be a little bit long-winded. So
I'll see you all in about 40 minutes when Ralph finally wraps up here.
We will come back to nobody viewing this any longer. But yeah, so everybody who's joined, I'm so grateful that each of you are here. Just find a good, sustainable posture for your body right now. No need to be too formal or too rigid. We won't be here too long, but just sit in a way that feels both kind of dignified and sustainable, like you can relax here. And if you want to gently close your eyes, that's more than welcome. The eyes open are just fine, or if you want to switch, if you need to switch, for a lot of trauma survivors, having the eyes closed can be a lot. And so I want everyone to feel a full license to sort of choose your own adventure with this. But in dropping into the inner space, right, inside the body, Can you start taking deep breaths as you begin to notice just what it's like to be here in this human apparatus? And one way that we can send signals of safety to the nervous system is by sending those deep breaths down to the belly, just beneath the navel. When people feel safe and okay at rest, they tend to shift to breathing in this deeper region. So we'll just stay here for another minute or so, but see if breathing here you can maybe soften the face, soften the eyes in particular, all around the eyes, behind the eyes. And then the whole area around the mouth, the jawline, the lips, the tongue, the cheeks. Can absolutely melt. And then I'll offer one other preparatory breathing pattern, breath work here. That is the quickest way I know to slow down the thinking mind and give us a sense of space inside. And you can do that by taking one last deep breath, maybe hold it for a moment, and then let your exhales just flow out of you, like you're just letting them go. And don't breathe in right away. Let there be space between breaths. And then you'll feel when the body itself wants to breathe in, and go ahead and let the inhale glide in. Okay, so every exhale that comes now, we're letting it go. We're letting it drop into space. We're waiting for just a moment, and then a very gentle effort on the inhale. So stay with this for like a minute or so here. Just exhales dropping, a nice, gentle, restful space. And then inhales, very sweet. The space between breaths. Actually has so much to offer us. It's a place where our nervous systems can really tone down, settle down. It's a place where we can find space in the mind, space between all the thinking and furious activity of the brain. It's also a space where we can begin to open to receive compassion, things that could help us heal, clarify our lives. So, as you continue to breathe in this very simple, gentle way, notice what you're sitting on right now. Let your attention go down to your backside and notice that there's a support that you can really trust. And in fact, just in saying that, I just felt my own pelvis just sort of sink down a little bit more. Surface area of my body in touch with the couch I'm on just increased. And I'll ask you to begin to acknowledge that what you're sitting on is made of earth stuff. Right? The raw materials of everything in your home, the clothes on your back, the food you ate this morning, it was all offered quite generously and without us asking by the earth. And so when I use this term earth energy, I'm talking about this great force, right? The earth is not a dead rock. It's this force that literally is springing up at all times, all manner of flora and fauna for us to use, for you to personally use, right? It's recycling our carbon dioxide into oxygen for us, all without our noticing, without our asking. We're also talking about the greatest artist that ever was. This massively creative force that propagates the very things that are the source of our life. Another way of saying that is the earth is a lover. And so imagine for a moment that you could really, through the lower half of your body, through what you're sitting on, begin to actually open to receive some of that good earth energy. Right? Or you might even imagine you're sitting in your favorite spot in nature. And you're beginning to really take into the body. It enters through the pelvis, through the legs. As you breathe in, it comes in even more, permeating the pelvis, flowing up to the belly, flowing up the backbone, into the lungs, into the shoulders, down into the hands, up into the head, the brain, the face. Notice what it's like to receive the love of the earth and to feel it spread throughout the body. Now, in this very short experience we're having, the last thing I'd like for you to do is, if there's any part of you inside that's been exhausted, maybe worried or irritable, just going through some things, you can actually allow whatever that is in you to sort of come to the foreground. And it's almost as if you're letting that inner child sit right in your lap. Feeling the support from below, through the body, through the breath, along with you. It's as if you're saying to the inner children inside, it's okay, darling. Just rest. Just rest. And here at the very end, if there's any love notes you want to send to the parts of you that do struggle, that do hurt, that do get angry, if there's anything you want those parts of you to know from this space of rest, send those messages now. Some folks gathered here might be accustomed to bowing after a practice like that. If that's you, let her rip. If that's not you, don't sweat it. Om Namo.
Thank you, Ralph.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to share, and for everybody gathered, take a moment, land, drink water, stretch, whatever you need to do. And the conversation will continue from here. But, yeah.
There are more people on than when you started, so.
Good.
It occurred to me partway through, I was like, I probably don't need to have me on the screen for all this, but given this is my first one, I'm like, if I turn off my camera, will I ever get it back on? So I just figured, let's not mess with it.
Yeah. Were you able to follow along the practice?
I was.
Yeah. I'm going to
Absolutely.
Well, yeah. What was that like for you to engage with that?
It was, I love the reflection that, everything that we are doing, everything that we are sitting on, eating, drinking is all from the earth. And then the other piece that I love is that reflection on, um, calling it the greatest artist, because that's the one thing when I look out at nature, when I look out at the world, I'm endlessly astonished by just the the never ending creativity. I was pondering flamingos earlier this week. We were at the zoo, and I was just like, wow, what a creature. And you realize how perfectly adapted they are. They look ridiculous at first glance, but then you're like, wait, they're actually perfectly adapted for what they do. And it's just this deep intelligence and deep creativity that never is always a wellspring for me of hope and joy and just general happiness.
Right. Yeah, this is kind of a weird thing to talk about, but there's a new documentary show on Hulu right now called The Secrets of the Elephants that I've been watching. That's just like cleansing my soul somehow to like get this deep look at these majestic animals that actually have these very, very rich and complex social and family lives that we've actually just all along have assumed wasn't there, just another animal, but it's this very intimate look at these different kinds of elephants that have just so much intelligence. And um, yeah, we're I think I said this in my first book, that what we struggle with pales in comparison to the grandeur that we actually are, and the spacious vast world that we're presented with. That there's more resources for us than we think that there are so much of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, my time in nature has that. There is an element that comes through to me where I feel like everything is going to be okay and in a deeper way, and it just feels like a place of rest to me.
Yeah. Yeah, and see that's the thing is so I work with this modality, as you know, called internal family systems. I've been on your show a bunch of times talking about it. And for everybody who's not familiar with it, it's this particular way of making the subconscious conscious, right? It's this particular way of tuning in, and maybe it's an anthropomorphization of your nervous system, but we find these parts of us inside of parts of our psyche, like we have parts of our body that hold different functions and different emotional realities and what have you. And then there's this compassionate, open-hearted center of it all that we can tune into too. Uh, that's in Buddhism it's taught that we pass through states of enlightenment all the time without noticing it. You know, and in IFS, this modality, it's that state, it's that open-hearted space of self-compassion that's always there, even if it gets covered over and we lose the experience of it. And when I start talking about this thing in IFS, it's called self-energy. Um, Usually the first place I go is, so what is it like when you're in nature? What is it like, when you're on your favorite hike, or when you're actually present, at the beach or swimming in a lake or something, when you're actually available for the experience? Because that's one place where the settledness happens on its own. That sense of possibility, the thing, perhaps things are more okay than I think that they are, perhaps more things are possible than I think that there are. That's the place where we start to naturally tap into. In Buddhism, there's another term, deeper nature or true nature. That's where we start to tap into it. So it sounds like that's true for you as well.
Yeah, very much so, very much so. I think you and I had said maybe, one of the things we might reflect upon was like what formative experiences sort of really, taught us this. And I think I came to it relatively later in life. You know, I know I used to like to be outdoors, but it wasn't until I was in my early 30s probably that I was going through a really difficult time, a very acute moment of a lot of pain, piled on top of other moments of pain. And I just decided on the spur of the moment that I was going to go away for a weekend to this place I'd heard about that was it was called Niches in Ohio, and it had very rustic cabins. no electricity, no running water, and yet it was really nice. I don't know how to explain it. It doesn't sound nice, but it was nice. And there was something, I went there and I immediately felt better in a way that lots of other things that I had been doing, therapy, meditation, and I'm not saying those things aren't valuable because they were, but there was something about that experience maybe that crystallized all of that together. And I just suddenly was like, oh, there's this whole other way of healing and growing and that I just have not been party to. And after that, I was kind of crazy just to get back, like more of that. Let me be out in the quiet by myself. It's a different, it's a different type of solitude than being alone in your house or being alone because you recognize, at least I do relatively quickly, that you're not alone out there at all.
Hmm.
you're with you're with all these creatures and consciousness, and there's a reciprocity to it. Like they know I'm there and I know they're there, and it's really. And so I just, ever since then, it's been a pretty fundamental part to me of what I know really helps me to feel whole.
Yeah, yeah, beautifully put. Beautifully put. And one thing that occurs to me is, when the Buddha first started teaching, he didn't establish monasteries and institutions. He said, "Come with me into the jungle."
Yeah.
Right? You know, like he wasn't trying to create a religion. He was trying to create a practice that was very, very
Yeah.
earth-centered, very, very nature-based.
And
And
we see
his,
that in so many of the contemplative traditions, regardless of whether it's Buddhism or Christianity or Judaism, is this retreat to the wilderness. It's a very common recurrent theme that we see again and again.
yeah, yeah. And so, I mean, yes, yes. Every throughout history and across cultures, right? There's this acknowledgement of the earth as this healing force, and then my this kind of mission that I'm on, or trail I'm trying to blaze right now, is then how do we bring it into the psychotherapeutic modality that has so much technique to it and such a clear map, a roadmap of the psyche, and just a real technology around how do we get into the granularity of our traumas, our reactivities, and what have you, the things that obscure and tend to block that open-hearted state. How do we mix these two things together, right? And what we just did in that meditation practice, and very brief, very cursory experience, but I think everybody who's still listening probably got like just a little taste of it, you know, is we're using the imagination, right? The brain doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. It just knows what it perceives. And all perception is really projection, is imagination. That's a whole different conversation for a whole different Instagram live. But using the imagination to sense into, well, what would it be like, to really connect to the earth. And it's true, the earth is all around us, even in our apartments, even in our homes. We are made of earth stuff ourselves. But the difference, right, of actually going into
Yep.
spaces that are sans concrete and sans electrical towers, and really tapping directly into it without the imagination, where it's actually real, actually visceral, and something you and I are intending
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah, I think it's part of why I've been so excited to do this with you. And we've been working on this for a while, trying to this, and what I mean by that is this upcoming workshop at Kripalu is to say, like there's this real power in being in nature. So let's do that. But I also, like you, am really interested in the angle that you're bringing to it, that allows us to use some of these psychological tools as well as the contemplative practices out in nature. And I think it's a real opportunity for all of us to be able to connect to nature in a way that we haven't, and get the healing powers from it in a way that is not quite the same as going on a hike. Although a hike is a great thing to do, there's going to be some things that we bring to the table that I think are are going to be really, really helpful in that regard. And, one of the things I love about nature is also a lot of these contemplative practices that we do, for me, become much easier in
Hmm.
nature. Like all of a sudden, like I can't sit, I'm trying to meditate and I can't get any sense of settledness and presence. And yet I go outside and I do the same thing. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh wow, that's easier than I thought it, like, boy, I now I feel like I'm understanding what they're talking about with these contemplative practices in a way that I don't when I'm sitting alone in my room by myself.
Yeah, yeah. One of my first teachers, Vinny Ferraro in San Francisco, I did a retreat with him recently. He said he's been practicing meditation in a hammock. He moved to the mountains, and so he's been doing his morning practice in a hammock in his backyard, and talking about the sense of boundlessness that gives him to actually, it's one thing to talk about feeling the spaciousness of the mind, or tuning into a sense of spaciousness, but actually to just feel space, the space of being outdoors. It's totally different. And then actually, I'm remembering what hooked me into wanting to do this retreat that we're doing in just a month together was the first conversation we had about it, wherein you talked about a practice you did where of just gazing at like a 2 by 2 patch of earth
Mm.
and bearing witness, actually like giving yourself enough time to settle and to set aside everything else and actually be present for and just really being with just a small patch of the earth. And I don't know, I could tell you what I remember from that conversation, or
Yeah.
maybe you would be better at talking about it. I mean, what did that offer you?
Well, I think it's just a lot of my practice has been in the Zen tradition, right? And there's a lot of focus on, there are in all the Buddhist traditions, but there's a real focus on a wholehearted commitment to the moment that you're in, and that there's much more to see and experience than you think there is.
Mm.
And and when you start looking at just a 2 by 2 patch of ground, to the first minute, you're like, well, I'm bored already. Like it doesn't take very long for the brain to be like, well, okay, this is a bunch of stupid ground, right? But the more you look, the more you start to notice there's a lot that starts going on there. There are I mean, there are bugs, there are things happening, there are shadows and light, and it's this way of, I think it's for me, it's a very concrete way of learning to see a little bit differently. And then when we can take that way of seeing, that deep artist's, almost poet's view, and we start applying that to all the other areas of our life, they take on a new resonance and a new depth. And I think that's kind of what I got from that, was this reminder, like, look more closely, look more
Mm.
closely.
Right. Yeah. That makes me think of actually is well, one, I think we're all aware that it's never been so hard to human as it is right now. Like 2023 life is just so much different than 2019 life was, right? The stresses, the pressures, the just the environment, the climate concerns, everything else that we're faced with. It's harder to get through one day of human life than it was even just a short time ago, it seems like. And I ignorantly posted this thing on Facebook a couple weeks ago, like, where are our ancestors this tired? Because this sucks. It's exhausting to be met with, yeah, just how much the hardships have increased. And I don't even need to unpack that anymore. We get it. But and then a bunch of people commented, well, like an African American person commented, yeah, no, my ancestors were definitely this tired. Another white person said, my
Yeah,
ancestors were
yeah,
coal miners. Like, yes,
yeah.
asshole. Think life has always been hard for people, but it doesn't change the fact that we are tuned into the difficulty of right now, and that our hearts have never really held so much in so many ways, having just lived through the global catastrophe of the pandemic, for example. And the truth that helps me so much with that is that there's just always more to the story, right? Which is what you're talking about, right? Like things are never what they are at face value. That face value, the direct experience of our lives is definitely real and important. But if we look, we start to see that there's layers behind it, right? We start to, we might be angry, for example, at something that's going on. But if we stay with the anger, we might find that, that there's maybe a sadness about the very thing that made us so angry. And if we stay with that sadness long enough, we might find that there's fear, fear of things staying this way, fear of things getting worse, or fear of I drop my guard, or fear of, so many things to be afraid of in this world. And if we stay with that fear long enough, this is kind of the parts work, the IFS pieces, you might start to find what Pema Chodron calls the soft spot that lies behind all things, right? Like the place where you're tender towards yourself, where there's some self-compassion for your own, some mercy for your own struggle in this life. And then when you can, get behind the layers like that itself, without having to change anything that's going on here at the surface, right? This is the essence of liberation, really, And so what you're talking about, just with this patch of earth practice, it's like a direct analog to this other very applicable kind of liberatory practice of learning how to stay with our experience and not take it all as heavily as we tend to, right?
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful way of saying it, for sure. There's a question has come up a couple times across the screen, and I just want to address it for people who are still here, which is that, yes, this is being recorded, and we'll post it to our separate Instagram accounts. Is that correct, Ralph?
That is absolutely correct.
I'm counting on you to know to know how to do that. But yes, assuming Ralph doesn't screw it up, everyone, this will be available to everyone.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But yeah. And so, if folks have other questions as well, absolutely feel free to chime in the chat. But yeah, so we are leading this retreat at Kripalu August 6th. It's going to be 5 full days. It starts Sunday evening with an introduction, and then we have Monday through Thursday full days, and then a half day on Friday, departure day on Friday, at this gorgeous retreat center that I've taught at several times now, where it's this big campus with every kind of yoga that you could possibly imagine happening in the evenings when folks aren't in workshops with teachers like ourselves. Beautiful food, just a really settled, kind of loving, kind, soft atmosphere where there's ecstatic dance. There's so many things going on at Kripalu, and there's this gorgeous land, and there's this lake, and there's these hiking trails that extend out. It's acres upon acres upon acres out there where we'll be going out to, spending mornings at least. I think since it's August, I think we agreed we'll do outdoor practices in the morning, and then in the afternoon come into the classroom where there's AC for integration work as well. And so so do you want to talk a little bit about the plan that we've developed here?
Sure. I think like you said, we plan to spend mornings outdoors, whether we are only assuming that it's going to be hot, then we have no idea for sure, but the idea will be to be outdoors in the mornings, doing some guided meditation outdoors, doing some spending time hiking, walking, being outdoors, and then also a series of different attentional practices. You talked about one of them, like where we spend our time looking at a particular piece of ground, but there's lots of ways to deepen attention in nature, and we'll do a lot of those different ones. And then in the afternoons, as you said, we're going to spend a little bit more time in the classroom, where we're going to be covering over a few different things. We're going to be exploring nature through the lens of all the different wisdom traditions out there. What do all these different traditions, Christianity, Judaism, shamanism, indigenous cultures have to say about nature and the ways they've interacted with it? We're going to be looking at nature and art and creating some art, writing some haikus, doing a variety of different things. And then you're going to be leading us in some of these deeper healing practices around internal family systems and nature, and sort of taking some of the energy that we're gathering in the morning and directing it in very clear healing ways. You might want to say, you might have a better way to say that than I just did, but
yeah, I'm excited for the moment, like we talked about, like gathering right outside the campus and a nice silent walking meditation out to our spot for the day, finding a place to sit, do contemplative work, feel the earth in all of these different ways, do some forest bathing as well, right? And then bringing it, into the classroom. I'm really excited for the talks you have prepared, the haiku exercise that you have prepared. And then for me, again, this kind of mixed view of both awakening and healing being synonymous with each other. And so how do we use all that we access towards, we're all holding traumas in our bodies. Every one of us, like Gabor Mate recently said on a podcast, we exist on a spectrum of woundedness. There's just no getting away from, society that invalidates us at every step, tells us we're not enough at every step. And so how can we use all that we've accessed to turn inside and like we just did for like just a very brief couple minutes at the very end, just allow that which has been struggling in us to be held in a space where there's compassion, there's so much support, there's so much wisdom and just the natural compassionate intelligence of the natural world, that we've been communing with, which is really, I'll just say this too, it's in us. This is, the earth is what I call a surrogate, right, for our own open-hearted state, really. It's reflecting back to us our own deeper nature. And so it's in us as well. And for me, that's the big thing. That's the big thing is, yes, restorative time. Let's rest and unravel everything that's become knotted up in us in so many ways. There's that. Let's use it to heal as well in very specific kind of laser focus sorts of ways. And also, can we use all of this to, gain access to and familiarity with what it is to have our own hearts opened? I teach on self-love, self-compassion so much, and the first thing out of so many people's mouths is, that sounds great. How the fuck do I get there? How do I get there? Because what I know is I'm freaking out, or what I know is that I'm deeply anxious, or what I know is that I'm good at taking care of others, but shitty at taking care of myself. And so that's my real kind of governing aspiration, is how do we use all of this to walk away with access to the thing that's always been with us. Again, just tends to get covered over. So so really gorgeous opportunity to spend a full week investing in oneself in this unusually beautiful fashion, right?
yeah. So I think, we hope anybody who's interested and able will join us there. I know if you go to oneyoufeed.net/nature, it'll take you to it. I'm sure there's links on Ralph's site. There's links on our site. You can go to Kripalu and search and find it. But I'm really excited. We've been talking about this for a couple years now, so I'm really excited that it's finally coming together and finally happening. So, and if anybody has any questions about that or anything we've talked about, maybe we spend a couple minutes here answering any questions either about the retreat or anything that we've covered today, and then after that we can kind of wrap up.
Yeah, indeed. And so we'll give folks a couple minutes in case there are any questions. And in the meantime, beyond, mentioning this retreat, if you want more samples of the work, I have a ton of free resources available on SoundCloud and Insight Timer and YouTube and all over the place, including a longer version of the earth energy practice that we just dipped our toe into together. And so, there's more resources available than we often think that there are. And
Yep.
so not just here to sell things either, but really just to amplify the availability of this good work.
Yep.
Which, in many ways is the most important work that we could possibly do, because it ripples out from us and affects everything.
Yep. And I think we've got 3 conversations where you've been on our podcast, the one you feed, that are all also freely available, where we talk with you, I think, about each of your books that you've written so far, and then also about this nature practice. So there's lots there, as well as, hundreds and hundreds of other conversations with lots of great people. So lots of free stuff out there.
It's true. And I love your podcast, and I'm always just slightly envious that you're always having conversations with the big heavies. Like, basically all of my heroes have been on your show at some point. It's just fucking phenomenal.
We've been we're very fortunate, and it's the joy of my life getting to talk to all these amazing people. And the fact that you've been on 3 times, is how to do it. And I think also in our Instagram bio, there's a link to register too, if you're interested in the workshop. Just trying to make it as simple as possible for anybody who wants to. But any questions, anyone?
Yeah.
Comments?
Yeah. I think the thumbs might be reticent at this time.
The thumbs are reticent. All right. Well, we may be at the end then.
Yeah. Indeed. Well, thank you so much, Eric. It's always a pleasure every time we get a chance to chat.
Yes.
And really, again, looking forward to this. And so much good stuff on the way.
Yeah.
Definitely to be continued. And thank you to each and everybody who joined us for this. Almost we're 47 minutes, so a solid chunk of time, which time is so precious these days. So
yes,
thank
you everyone
for your time and attention.
And we'll see you in some way, shape, or form in the future. Thank you. Bye.
Fantastic. Be well, Eric. Take care.
You too, Ralph.
Bye, everybody.